Welcome to Snowmobile Sessions Live on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. We're the #1 destination to learn about snowmobiling, network with other sledders, and have an awesome time doing it. We'll meet other snowmobilers that share your passion and show your fan photos along the way. Snowmobile Sessions Live. Enjoy the ride.
It's a journey for life, and I'm your ride. Hang on.
This episode of Snowmobile Sessions Live is brought to you by Energy Power Sports. They're Oakville's full-line BRP dealer with sales and service to all BRP models and so much more. Check out energypowersports.ca. Also, don't forget to check out their YouTube channel. They're posting videos there all the time. Just search up Energy Power Sports on YouTube. Click that subscribe button and check out some of their content. It's also brought to you by Fast Track Snowmobile Traction Products. And don't forget, we have an exclusive offer for Snowmobile Sessions fans. It's a free install toolkit with the purchase of a stud kit. So when you add the studs and backers and nuts to your cart, just make sure you add a toolkit in there. Use the coupon code SNOW, S-N-O-W, at checkout, and that toolkit is absolutely free. It's at fasttrack.co, fasttrac.co. And also it's brought to you by the fans. And thank you so much, fans, for all your support over the each episode. And we look forward to more. But anyway, Rich is off tonight. He had a tough weekend, and maybe he's got the bottle flu. I'm not sure, but we miss him dearly. So I want to introduce everybody to Scott Davis. He's like the Lance Armstrong of the Iron Dog racing, 7-time champion. Only he didn't cheat.
Good point.
How you doing, Scott?
Very good.
That's good.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks everybody in waiting for us to start tonight. I got a really late start on it, and but it's going to be a good show. So looking forward to chatting with Scott. But let's see who's in the chat right now. We got. I'll start at the top here. We got Renegade X. He was first in tonight. He says, "Good evening, guys." And J Lo Fly Low says, "Hello, everyone." Anthony Palermo, he sent me in some pictures. He says he hopes everyone's well. Dominator says, "Evening, gents." And Jacob Harney, he says, "Hey, guys." And Pro Polaris Rob, he says, "Good evening, peeps." Snowstorms in there. We got Colton Shaner. We got Bruce Stewart, Corey Brock. Hey, fellas. Mike Goolies, of course, he's there. Jay Fly Low, Uncle Buck and Mrs. Uncle Buck. What else we got here? Shag Boys. Yeah, Tracks and Waves. There's another one. What else? It just goes on and on. There's a lot of people sitting there. Bruce Stewart, of course, looks like we're on. Kyle Voden says, "Way to go, Gary. Glad to see the show tonight." And Mike Goolies is laughing. I don't know why he's got laughing emoji, but maybe he's laughing at my hardships here. So anyway, I got to crack a beer after this setup. So yeah. So anyway, just we're going to talk more to you as we get through the fan photos, but tell us a bit about yourself and the Iron Dog and how it all came to be. How'd you get into it?
Well, I was cross-country raced snowmobiles up here for, since I was a teenager. And when the Iron Dog first started, it was called the Gold Rush Classic, and it actually mimicked the dog route. It starts in Anchorage, more or less, Big Lake, and then goes to Nome. And my original background in racing was motorcycles. I raced motorcycles and snowmobiles for over 50 years. Just kind of gets in your blood and it never leaves. But Iron Dog was just one of those things that I could do, as I was in my business and as I was raising kids, and it was just something we could do as a family. And it was in our off season. We were in the concrete block in the concrete business here in Alaska, and it was it worked well for timing. So I started racing motorcycles, started racing snowmobiles in the 70s. And, when Iron Dog came along, I thought it was a kind of a cool event, and not knowing anything about the race, signed up and just learned as we went. Back then there was no navigational aids. Like now you just download a track and you're fine. But back then you had to remember the trail. You had to remember how to get in and out of those villages. And so, yeah, it's really evolved over the years for sure.
So just stepping back a bit, you're in Alaska.
Yes.
And just to tell people, how many miles or kilometers is the race?
Well, started out as 1,000
miles.
1,000 miles. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So it's a state. So there's mandatory layovers. So a little bit like your King's Quest, but they take you off the clock and you can't work on your snowmobile or anything during that time. And they just do it to kind of lengthen the race out and for safety. And so in 1993, after 10 years of the race, it round tripped. So it went from Big Lake to Anchorage to Big Lake. Well, that was about 2,200 miles. And it stayed that way for a while. And then they started Anchorage, went to Nome, finished in Fairbanks. They did that for a while. And it was an abbreviated version, 1,900 miles, a little bit shorter, a little easier race. To Nome and back from Big Lake goes through the Alaska range twice, which can be challenging with, it doesn't go very long without a snowstorm there in Alaska range. So, and now, as of 2 years ago, it's 2,400 miles. They've added another loop, 350 miles or something in there, go up to around Kotzebue, and it takes in a little more of the northwest part of the state of Alaska.
Right. And when you started, what year was that? Like what were you riding? Like now there's Iron Dog, snowmobiles, like, you've got the Ski-Doo Iron Dog that's purpose built. What were they riding back when it first started?
We were riding Yamaha SR5s. So that's a strutting on the skis, and had a fairly, I would say I call it a high tech for those years, rear skid frame, and 540 fans. When we rode those, raced the first race in 1984, and that was an abbreviated race, permitting or something, and in fact there was really low snow for about 200 miles, like none. Yeah, it happens here, so anyway, 1984 and 1985 was my first win with a good friend of mine, and we just kind of evolved through. The first year, what we set up for the next year, because of what happened in the first year, and then it was all wrong, because what we learned about the Iron Dog is you can't over prepare for one condition, because you can't guarantee you're going to have that condition.
He is an icon.
Sorry about that. I was just queuing up a video. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Do you want me to play that? It's inside the Iron Dog. It's 3 minutes, that one. I think it'll give people an idea of what this is all about. So just bear with me. I'm going to put it on. I think you should be able to talk while this is going.
Okay.
So feel free if you have any comments to narrate it. But here, just let me cue this up and there we go. Why isn't it showing on there? Still got my PowerPoint up for some reason. Just bear with me a second. Yeah, this is high-tech production here, I'm telling you. We are professionals.
Pure.
Don't know why that's still showing. It's
Of the state's snowmobile racing community.
but it's funny you can hear that.
Yeah.
Here, let me just see if I can. I don't know how to switch it. For some reason, my PowerPoint's taken up all my
a 7-time champion of this truly Alaskan.
Yeah. Here, hold it. I got another way of doing this here. So when was the last time you did the race?
I think it was 2015. And
Would you do it? Would you do it again if somebody coaxed you to do it?
It's tempting, so I did it over 4 decades. So 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2000 teens. And I raced 32 years consistently with a break in there with broken body parts, or one year the race was delayed and didn't go. But so I did it a lot, and I didn't leave anything on the trail I need to go back and retrieve. So I would do it for fun. My kids, I got to race it, I don't know, around 2010 with my son. And that was a great experience. And then came back and raced competitively, after that. And my son was just kind of recovering from a pretty horrific foot injury. And it was a tough race. It was a lot of snow and super tough. And I do it for fun. I think, as time went on, what started to fail was, I think it just took a lot more training to get in race shape. But your vision, I would say, I was blessed with really good eyesight.
Oh, really? That plays a big factor, does it?
It does. I think that your low light ability, so you're riding terrain that all looks the same. The sky and the ground look like one. You're out of the trees and you're riding either the river or the coast of western coast of Alaska, and there's no depth perception because it's all flat. And if the sun isn't out, it can be daunting. So I would say competitively, my eyes have gone past that. So and I probably pushed my race career. I stopped racing at 56 years old.
Wowza.
Iron Dog was with me, it was part of my life, and it still is, for 32 years. But I mean, probably by next year, see, my son won with a fellow Canadian, Ryan Simons.
I was going to say, your son still does it, right?
Yeah, he's took a couple of years off. Corey, we've been racing with Corey since he was 7 years old. So, and he's fixing to be 34 years old. So he's been at it a long time. So he took a little break. And Ryan is from, Western Canada. I don't remember exactly where he's from. Do you, Regina? Anyway, so, and actually, kind of a cool thing, Ryan is the first non-Alaskan to win the race.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. So he was on the same team with Christian Brothers, snowcross and then cross country racing that Corey was. So Corey and Ryan were teammates with Christian Brothers, and kind of went through the ranks. And then Ryan and Corey both started racing cross country as it made its comeback there in Great Lakes region.
Oh, nice. Okay, I'm going to try this. It may be out of sync for audio, but let's just try and share the screen, and we'll see what happens here. Oh, that's nice and small, isn't it? Here, I'll bring this over. I bring it over. Where'd it go? Anyway, we're going to have to look at it tiny like this. So hold on.
I put my glasses on, Gary.
Yeah, for sure.
Is an icon of the state's snowmobile racing community, a 7-time champion of this truly Alaskan
This is about
race.
Scott here.
This is Inside the Iron Dog with Scott Davis, presented by Ski-Doo Snowmobiles. What matters is what's next.
all the teams that went out the very last portion of the early draw were, disappointed, thinking they're going to have to battle a lot of teams, maybe get held up at gas stops, and then Mother Nature throws 3 feet of snow in there, totally turned that around. So everybody in the front had to break trail, and they kind of cruised right through there. And even Chris Olds, who took a layover at Squetna, was a huge gift to him. So, well, I mean, the teams that stopped, they didn't have any choice. They'd already been breaking trail for 35 miles. They were losing time to the guys in the end. They had to. They were probably kind of spent, could use some water, maybe dry out their gear and stuff. So they made the right choice up front. Further back in the field, the more and more teams kept going, and they could kind of team up. I would say that all in all, people that had to break any trail lost time to the leaders. It's a quarter away, and the Ruby's like a quarter of a way in the race, but as far as energy expended, it's probably 50% of the energy or more. From here on out, there's a little section from Caltag to Unalakleet, like halfway. It's called Old Woman. That 40 miles can get really bumpy because the locals use it a fair amount. Get really rough. Chance to make up a little time, but after that, you're pretty much treeless terrain, kind of tundra, ice, and that kind of stuff. Harder to make up time. There's a lot more obstacles the first 2 days than there are, there's plenty more to hit there, but the rest of the way, but there's less of them. You're on a trail on the river, there's, other people have gone there. Sometimes you're out first couple of days, you don't know who's been there before you. What we see is there can be huge time intervals that are different, day 1 and day 2, but once you get on the river, without a crash or burn down or something, whether you can go 90 or 91 or 92, it doesn't really, it's really hard to make time on. It's a relief, you get a chance to rest. It's usually quite a bit cooler. You just came through, you get to Ruby, you're all sweated up. You get on the river, zip up, put on a face mask, or, cover up, pull your face mask up, do whatever you got to do. And, the choice will be whether you stay at Ruby or whether you go to Galena, or another 100 miles, you go to Caltag, and then you're off the river and you could go back on the clock, lightly dressed to go over the portage to Caltag.
Stay up to date on the 2016 Iron Dog with the team of Channel 2 News and KT.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a really interesting race, and it's evolved a lot over the years.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's thing I wanted to show that because it shows like what the people look like during the race. And I mean, I was blown away by the duct tape that people are wearing on their faces. It's you can't imagine how cold that would be in the frostbite, and what kind of speeds are you traveling, when you're running this.
The crazy thing is, Gary, first day, I would say first 500 miles till you get to the river system, you're probably averaging 40. And then when you get on the river, you're virtually going as fast as you can see. So if there's good light, or if you're riding at night and you can see, and we've got really good lights nowadays, you can virtually go as fast as a 600 will go. And that's, guys are claiming speeds, but I'm saying the 90s is about as good as it gets, and miles an hour. And, and believe it or not, with all the navigation, all the maintenance, this is all stuff that's done on the clock. Navigation, gassing, which can be challenging. If you roll up to a gas stop and you happen to be behind a couple teams, you can lose 15 minutes waiting. If it's a single pump gas stop, basically guys are putting, between 10 and 15 gallons of fuel in each sled. And if it's a long stretch, they'll be fueling their ox tanks. So you can lose a lot of time doing that. And I mean, we've actually been in situations where there's so many people there, we had to take a layover because we would have lost 20 minutes, and you can't do that. So believe it or not, you can actually average across the terrain. You can, the way it's done, and the fastest guys now are averaging in the mid 50s with all those components combined. So navigation, fueling, oiling, maintenance, all the on-clock time, they're still averaging in the 50s. Well, try to do that in a car driving across Canada or Alaska or wherever. It's hard to do. So.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. What's the rationale, do you think, behind the 600 E-Tech? Like that was what Skidoo launched for the Iron Dog edition. That's what you rode, right? Wouldn't a four-stroke make more sense?
Yeah, no, I think the Iron Dog did a good job. Kind of originally, it was unlimited. You could ride whatever you wanted. And then for whatever reason, they thought there was a safety factor in there, and they so a little bit of it was safety, and because it was unlimited, then it was 500, 600, 700. It's been all over the place, and so kind of when I saw or International Snowmobile Committee, whatever that is, whenever they started kind of mandating 600cc engines for that kind of racing, it kind of fit what we did. And then every manufacturer makes one, and that was the other thing you had to do, is you didn't want to exclude through CCs, exclude a manufacturer, and I think they did a good job with that.
Yeah, I think it makes it a little more tricky too, right? It takes it back to the roots of what the original race was, and do you remember what the philosophy was of running a dog sled race on snowmobiles? Did your father do it before you, or like there's some vintage pictures there, right?
Yeah, I was the first one in the family that kind of got into racing, and so I don't know, I wasn't necessarily good at anything else when I discovered I was good at motorsports. I was supremely driven. 30 state championships and motorcycles, and so I mean, I think we just kind of morphed in just what I did. It was just kind of what I was good at when I figured that out. And in the early years, Iron Dog was about survival. So in the early years, we were averaging half of what they average now. So if you could average 25 or 30 miles an hour in that first 1,000 miles, you're doing pretty good. You're riding SR5s or 400 Indies, or a Springer 440 Arctic Cat. I mean, that's kind of how it started. But it was a survival race back then, and now it's a race start to finish. And that's kind of what last 15 years, it's kind of, and the rules have changed a little bit over the years too, Gary, where you used to have to carry, for a while, we had to carry everything with us. You couldn't get a part anywhere. So you had to leave the starting line with everything strapped onto your sled that you thought might break. So
really, wow.
Yep. And with first time,
I do that now, but it's in my back bag, and I leave it unzipped, and it ends up all over the trail.
Yeah.
The whole bag falls off, and it's gone.
I wished I had a picture for the longest time of everything that I had mounted on my 93. Back then it was ZR. So we raced Yamaha until there was a change in ownership in Alaska on the distributorship. Anyway, I kind of lost my ride. So, kind of gravitated to Arctic Cat, and enjoyed that immensely. My whole family, both my daughter and my son, former national champions on Arctic Cats and in snowcross, and we were involved. Had the engineering team and the race team stay at our house here while we tested, and we just we thoroughly enjoyed being a part of Arctic Cat, and anyway, so we Yamaha Arctic Cat, and then evolved into Skidoo and the BRP product, and it fit, had a much more supple skid, which as I aged became an issue. So it needed to be a little more compliant than, I would say the Arctic Cat race sled was just harsh for a ride. So anyway, it was a great, we had great sponsors along the way, and they were all good. And, they gave what they could. And it was never, because it might be nothing next year, you know how racing is. And
yeah, that's right.
But the BRP product, I think, is by far, fit, my aging body, and it was more compliant, I would say, especially with a skid frame, for a ride.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. No, that's good. What are some of the, you mentioned about rules? What are some of the other crazy rules? Like when you're wrenching, do you have to do your own wrenching? Do you have pit crews? What about fuel stops and things like
Yeah,
that?
I
I know.
along the way, if you have to wrench, it's just you and your partner, so it's a 2-man team. I guess we forgot to mention that. So it's 2
Yeah.
people, and the only place they allow people to help you is in Nome, which is kind of the halfway point, and that's where the major amount of work is done. There, you're in a shop, it's warm, you've got electricity and air available, so you can, do some of the larger things that need to be done, if you've had problems along the way. And from having to take all your parts, so you can get parts at the checkpoints, and it's pretty specific now. Uh,
Yeah.
so, so you end up with kind of, because what happened is we were carrying so much that we were breaking things because we were carrying so much. So, say, you had to carry a 4.5 pound rear skid spring. Back in the old days when they were round, they were 4.5 pounds, and we carried 4 of them. We carried 4 of them because you never knew if you're going to break the left or the right, but you knew they were going to break, and
Oh my God.
you never know if you're going to break, 2 of the lefts or 2 rights. So, we'd carry a ski shock and carry a rear skid, and sometimes we'd carry a front skid. And I mean, just think about if you run into snow, how many belts you'd burn. Back in the 80s or 90s, things just didn't work like they do now. So you might carry 5 belts, and so all that stuff adds up, nuts and bolts, and throttle levers and brake levers. And I mean, we double up the windshields on sleds so that if one guy crashed and broke, you take a windshield off the other sled and put it on that one. So, it's pretty innovative. A lot of guys that did stuff, and it's just commonplace now. But when we started, there was no normal. We just figured it out, right? So in the early years, I remember we needed a lot of daylight. And I was thinking, I was alluded to this earlier. We needed more lighting, and back then they had maybe you could run 100-watt light, and we fabbed up a 35 amp alternator.
Ah!
And right off of like an Isuzu or something, and put four big old driver lights along the front of over the sled's hood. And it was completely different race, and hardly ran into any time in the night. So, that was kind of my point about you can't over prepare for one condition, because it'll screw you in every other part of it. So
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And is it kind of like Kane's Quest where there's no trails? You're just plowing through whatever's in your way.
I would say Kane's Quest probably has more breaking trail and snow than we do. I would say the only time we break trail is if there's fresh snow, or if there hasn't been any travel in between these villages, and that happens a lot. You get a snowstorm, and the locals don't travel between those villages, so you end up breaking trail there. Or at the start of the race, they try to make sure there's a trail, but if it snows the night of the race, there ain't nothing they can do about it. So you're just out there floundering around in the snow. And and I said, I only want to lead one part of the race, and that's the very end. And so being in the lead can be detrimental if there's snow. You're out there, built a big lead, you run into a bunch of snow, and you don't have enough gas to break trail for very long. So you break trail until you think you got enough gas, and you stop and wait for somebody to come up behind you, and it's demoralizing. But that's kind of just a fact of the race.
Wow. That's insane. Let's talk more about the Iron Dog, but do you want to look at some fan photos of some of our other fans' crazy adventures? Yeah,
You bet.
Here,
Yeah.
let me just cue these up then.
Fan photos are brought to you by Fast Track Snowmobile Traction Products.
Slides with us tonight, night. Don't let them go to waste. One moment, one shot.
Check out fasttrack.co.
All right, and listen, we announced a special event last week, and it's here. I'm going to take over the whole screen here, and it was the Snowmobile Sessions Muskoka Beer Spa event. We like beer, we like snowmobiles, we like BS, beers and snowmobiles, not together at the same time. Don't drink and drive. But listen, there's only one cabin left, so thank you everybody for booking, and. If you want to get in on it, get in on it fast. I know it's going to go. The dates are Monday, February 21st. So that's the tail end of the Family Day weekend. The Monday night, February 21st, and the 22nd is a Tuesday night. It's only $99 a person if you have 4 people in the cabin. If you have 5 or more, it goes down to $89 a person. Plus, that includes a $25 gift card per night. So really, it only costs you about $75 or less. And that gift card's good for food, booze, or swag in the store. Plus, each of the cabins is a beer spa. Each of the cabins has a beer tap in it, and we're getting a special deal of a keg included in our stay in each cabin. So, hey, you can't go wrong. But don't drink and sled. If you want any more information, just contact Melissa Whittle at 705-571-1814. The trail is about 1.8 kilometers down the road. It's open right now, and there's some awesome loops you can do. And I've got a little route planned at Party Sound and through the roller coasters of Muskoka, and it'll be a fun time. So make sure you get on that and book right away, because I doubt that thing is going to last for the next couple of days. I think it was tentatively spoken for, but nothing's been confirmed on it yet. But get on there, first come, first serve, and away we go. If you want to get on a waiting list, if you call and it is gone, and you're maybe flying solo, or you just got 2 guys, and you want to get on a waiting list to see if anyone has room in a cabin, there may be some space in someone else's cabin. We can throw you in. But just reach out to me at fanphoto@mudbrats.com. To be on the waiting list. And but if you want to book the whole cabin, give Melissa a call at 705-571-1814. But check out MuskokaBeerSpa.com. That'll be a great event. So we lost Scott in the whole works of it all. Wait for him to get back. So yeah, Corey Brock can't wait for the beer spa. It's going to be a blast. Yeah. So. But I love my new gauge. I know there's some talk about the new Ski-Doo gauge, and the GPS is amazing when it works. I know Corey's had it flawless, and he's really good at it. He's really good at navigating around. There's a little bit of trick to working that dial and getting the features of zoom in, zoom out. And I had actually a chance to play around with it on the weekend, and it becomes more second nature. There's a few things I wish it had. Coming from Polaris Ride Command, but I think there's a lot of things that are better than Polaris Ride Command, so it's pretty neat. So, but yeah. So anyway, I know Bruce Spruance is having some hiccups, but Bruce, if you want to email you, I'll tell you what my issues were with that. But I think it's behind me now, and away we go. So yeah, but that beer spa, do you get anything like that up there?
You know, we do a little bit of that, but it's more private stuff. Unfortunately, it's really hard to have a trail system that includes that kind of stuff. There is a few around. Was up at Petersville riding this weekend, and there's a lodge or two around. that you can stop and have a beer or a burger or something. So it's probably a lot more limited than it is for you guys in Canada and the Midwest, kind of the Great Lakes region, all the way back to the East Coast has that in the U.S. too. So
Yeah.
we're kind of jealous about that, but we can get off the trail anywhere we want. So
yeah, I was talking to some guys, and we had Big Moose Inn on last week from Old Forge in Michigan, and or upper state in New York. Sorry if I'm getting my geography wrong again. You guys know I'm not good at it. But anyway, it looks amazing because it's a lake and it's a trail system, and you can stop and eat and have a bite, have a drink, and just chillax. So ours is more spread out, few and far between. We don't do a lot of that. Like I'd prefer to wait till after the ride's done, but
sure.
But it's it'll be a good thing. It'll be a fun time. Melissa's going to come on, I think next week. She was going to come on tonight, but she kind of got double booked. So she's going to have some winter pictures of the resort and that kind of thing, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. Got a lot of great people that reached out and said, yeah, I booked a cabin, and a buddy I haven't seen in a while, like years, that was involved in, for those that follow the show all last year, the Hans and Franz motel story with the frozen toilets, and he's going to be there, so you'll know that it's not a BS story. I mean, it's beers and snowmobiles, but it's, yeah. So we may get some dirt on old Gary yet there with him coming. So now I don't know why this is not showing the slide behind me. Why is it showing that screen? That's kind of weird. Oh, I see. This is the problem. For some reason.
It's a little off, huh?
Yeah, it's a lot off.
There we go.
Yeah, but I don't know why it's not. Hold on, bear with me a moment. Let's see if that comes up with something. No, geez, this is the worst. This is the worst I've ever seen this craziness here. It's almost like it's trying to extend my monitors. Hold on. We'll get to this. Hold on. I think I know what's wrong. There we go. I'll learn this yet. You know that, right?
There you go.
There, perfect. There we go. I had that computer hooked up to a system at work, and it didn't I was extending the display, so I guess I didn't change that back. So anyway, on the weekend, there's a YouTuber named Mark Bow, and we're riding along. My son and I just went out on Sunday and thought we'd take a little rip. No, Saturday, sorry. And just local trails here. They're awesome right now. We have some amazing conditions. And we're driving along, and my buddy Mark Bow there with the furry hat there I'm standing beside, that's me with the thumbs up. He's got a Blizzard, a 2019 Blizzard, and his I know he also has a Polaris Classic, which is what that 2-up seat right there is on. Mm-hmm. And we're driving along, and I see this kid on this old Polaris Classic with a 2-up seat, and behind it's a Blizzard, and we're driving along, and I kept thinking to myself, geez, that's like Mark Bow's package, right? And then as soon as we come to a stop sign, my son and I both said at the same time, oh my God, that's Mark Bow. And I said, you get up on the left. Like, they didn't know we were behind him then. And I said, don't let him see you. I said, you go on the left and I'll go on the right. And we pass them both at the same time. And I'm giving him the Trudeau salute out the back, scared the hell out of him. And we came in there like a wrecking ball. And his buddy Dan, the guy in the blue and white stripe snowsuit there, has never met us before. So I don't think he knew what to think. We ended up storming coming through, and I pulled out in front of them, and they got them to pull over, and then we sat and hugged and shot the shit for a while, and then we ended up riding together for the rest of the day. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah. So that's a picture there.
Kind of what snowmobiling's about, I mean, I think over the years, all the racing we did, and it's still, we're blessed by, I mean, I can go 3 different directions from my home, and in an hour I'll be, world-class mountain riding.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're blessed in that way. We have a lot of elevation changes here, but the interesting thing about Alaska is our elevation starts at sea level. It doesn't start at 9,000 feet. So, turbos are a huge thing, when you're riding 8, 9, 10,000 feet, but, and they're popular here, the track speed that the turbo gives the sled has its advantages, but it is also a handful to ride when you're at sea level. So we were just riding with a bunch of guys this weekend and a couple guys had the tune on the new 850 turbos, and they were they're getting wore out, kind of riding at sea level with all that horsepower, this part of your arm.
Yeah, that's right.
Taking a beating.
Well, Corey asked me if I was going to ride yesterday, and I said, you know what? We had been out every day and every night, so, like sometimes both day and night, and we come home for supper and then hit the trails again. And I said, I just needed yesterday to let my arms shrink back to regular length. I thought my knuckles, it was bad when my knuckles were dragging on the ground because they stretch so much, That's my excuse for not zipping my travel bag up and everything falling out. So, but saying that, if anyone found we went up and it's like I pulled the hand muffs out because it was a cold day, and somehow it never got zipped up and ended up stopping with Mark Bowe at the very last peak of the trail, and I went, this bag was full when we left, and it's empty now.
Now it's light.
And then we had the second annual MUDBRATS scavenger hunt, and I was finding things people had put in trees, which restores my faith in humanity, because I lost a $175 bag when I was in Kirkland Lake, and we went out at night looking for it, thinking, well, if someone found it, maybe they hung it in a tree or put it at the side of the trail, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't. And then this one here, we found one glove. I didn't find my toe straps. There was a pink Mary Maxim, which is a knitting supply company here, a pink plastic bag. And I just had a bunch of camera accessories in it. But I figured out today I had actually one of my 4K Sony cameras, action cams in it. So that was a big loss. The battery, 128 gig SD card, like it goes on and on and on. That'll be gone. I'm sure of that. So if you wonder why I don't have any videos coming out in the next little while, that could be the reason. But no, it's my own stupidity. So we'll get back in on it anyway and make her happen. But it's always fun riding with Mark Bowe. I'm hoping he can come up to the beer spa weekend and away we go. So and it was great meeting his friend Dan too. So, but this is Noah Monge, and he says this is Old Forge in the Fulton Chain Lakes. He said he finally got out Saturday and put on the first 100 miles on the 650. He loves the power and ride in Poland, Maine. I don't see a 650 there. Those are 600s. So I don't know what that was. That must be someone else. I always screw up the wording though. So maybe that's someone else's copy, but those are some nice sleds, and look at that mountain range back there. Now you travel quite a bit. Have you ever snowmobiled outside of Alaska? Have you done Ontario or you done Michigan, New York, or have you gone mountain riding?
With racing kind of consumed my winters for like I said, race steady for 50 years and 35 years or 32-year span racing underdog. So the answer to that question is I really have. I mean, I've ridden snowcross for a while, qualified for X Games when I was out with when my son was kind of going through the ranks in snowcross, but I've missed out on some of the stuff out west, BC and Whistler and those areas there. So, but my kids have, and a bunch of my riding buddies have, did the Yellowstone thing. And, we've been kind of, the summers is kind of how we're doing that now. We travel about with a motorcycle in my truck behind my motorhome. So we did a 5 months of it this summer and got to see some amazing country. But I'm really kind of envious, of some of the systems, the trail systems that you see in Eastern Canada and east, from the Great Lakes east in the U.S. as well. But I guess probably it's been a time issue for me more than a want issue. So I just haven't done that. So I'm well familiar with kind of how things are done there, and worked with a race team and engineering team with ArctiCAD, and did some field tests there in northern Minnesota, and raced some cross countries, raced the Grand a few times. The 500 miler there used to be called the Winnipeg St. Paul. That was the original route, but now it's more of a lap race. And my son will be racing that. Corey will be doing that this a couple weeks maybe from now. But
nice.
Yeah. So yeah, we probably have some of the most amazing riding areas here, like I said, within 100 miles of my house, and so we get kind of spoiled.
Oh yeah, for sure. Right. Is it, you can pretty much leave from your back door, can you?
We can. We can ride right from what I'm looking at now. To get to the good areas, we usually trailer just to save time.
Yeah, nice. That's kind of like us too. Why burn it all out if you can just trailer and get perfect conditions,
well,
right?
I know your trail system there really allows you guys way more of that, and just snowmobiles have just come so far in the last 20 years. Realistically, 20 years ago, you couldn't buy a mountain sled. You couldn't hardly buy a long track because we had to make them.
That's right.
We started figuring out, lifting the handlebars up and, and narrowing the ski stance and putting long tracks on them. Wasn't that long ago you couldn't buy one. You had to make them. So the factories have done a fantastic job kind of adapting the snowmobiles to the Western riding, and Polaris and Ski-Doo, I think, have definitely, kind of lead the pack there in mountain riding.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They're all getting good though. Like it's crazy what's happening out there. This is from our pal Anthony, and he says, "Hey Gary, this is a trip we did in Orangeville, Ontario. Isn't too far away from here. Yeah, it was a great time. The trails were a good mix of everything, but probably will not go back there. There's a lot of road riding. Other than that, it's good to be back on the sled and ripping again. Yeah. Finally get out. That finally got out Saturday is an old blurb from last week. So there we go. So he sent me a couple pictures here. I love that green one. That's pretty cool. Nice wrap on that.
I don't know if I've ever seen, and I don't think I've ever seen a camo or a green like that.
I think the mountain ones had it like that, but that wouldn't be a mountain sled. Yeah, that's a neat color.
Yeah, that looks like it's original Rev chassis almost.
Yeah, it's a Rev XP on that one.
Yeah,
both those are pretty cool. Yeah, that's a typical trail shot there to the right, in southern Ontario. With all the sleds lined up, lots of hills and
kind of the smaller trees. Looks like they'd be tough to ride through the trees there. They're so close. So.
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to go off trail at too great a speed.
No room for a sled, huh?
This is from Ryan, Canuck Power Sports. He says he got out for a rip on the 900R this afternoon. Looking forward to piling up the miles on this machine. It's the tits, he says.
Yeah. I had Last year, all I could get for a wide track was an SWT turbo. I mean, I wanted the turbo, and man, that thing makes some horsepower. That is a fun snowmobile ride. I've sold it now, bought a Extreme, which is an 850 in that same chassis, but
Right.
I loved that turbo 4-stroke. It makes some of the coolest horsepower. You know, you just gas it up and she rotates back and takes a squat and she goes. It's fun
gone.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yep.
right on. Actually, yeah, Anthony says it's a 2013 free ride. They're drab olive green.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's a plastics off of a free ride. So that's pretty neat to know. Yeah, I knew the mountain sleds they had that color, so I imagine it carried over to the free ride as well. So,
Yeah, maybe so.
here's another good shot of it. Looks like it's on the trail between Sprucedale and Kearney. Actually, that one, or it could be the Seguin. But
Gary, what length track is popular in your area?
that would be 129 is kind of the standard. That would be like the MXZ. And then that would be I'd have to look and see how many link brackets are on that, but 137, that's a 137 on that. So that's a Renegade.
Yeah.
But
but in your, in your area, is that what's common? Kind of trail?
Yeah.
Crossover trail sleds?
Yeah, it's a mix. I wouldn't say it's 50% 129 versus 137, but it's a pretty good mix. I think a lot of the hardcore guys go 137 now. Corey swapped up to from a 129 to 137. I had a 137 Renegade. I went to a 129 and back up to the Renegade again. So I think for our trails around here where they get so bumpy and whooped out, the 137 does give you some advantage. But I didn't find a 129 to be a great loss, When
the Iron Dog sled was first produced, so purpose-built snowmobile for Iron Dog. And, we worked closely with the factory kind of, to give them the componentry that we ended up with. And the cool thing is, when the sled was delivered, it was really down to just, your preference for auxiliary fuel cells, lights, wind protection, that kind of stuff. Because we do have up to 120 miles in between checkpoints. So, and if there's snow, it's tough to make it that far. But I guess my point, Gary, was that we're starting everybody, almost everyone, even in Iron Dog, has converted to the 137 length on most brands, especially on the BRP product.
Yeah. What was the Iron Dog? It was a 129 when it came out, right? Wasn't it 2015?
It was might have been prior to that, because the next year I don't think they made them.
No, they didn't. Yeah.
So they made one. It might have something like that, 14 or 15, Gary, or in that area.
Yeah, they're nice sled. I see them once in a while, but man, they're a gorgeous machine.
Yep.
I actually seen someone did a wrap on an 850 that had the Iron Dog graphics, or it could have been a 600R, but in the Gen 4, it looked really cool because they do have the yellow and the black side panels, right? Same treatment. So
yeah, I think the only we struggle a little bit with front arms, getting those to hold up on the skid, and they also, the spindles were a little too soft to, and they'd waller the taper out on the ball joints, and they got really sloppy. I kept my last race sled. I'm trying to restore it, and if I ever make it to the Snowmobile Hall of Fame, I'm going to donate it to the Hall of Fame so it can be on display there.
Nice. Kirk and Penny are watching and they're tuning in.
Hey, Kirk, Penny.
Yeah. Where you at there, Penny? Listen, he says, Gary, ask Scott what year you're testing the rack steering for Skidoo.
Yeah, that was about 14 or so, 15. And we changed bulkheads to allow us to use that in the beginning. And then I think Iron Dog sled came with it, with that easier steering. And some of the guys raced with CNA Pro skis, and I never was a fan because they're really hard on your arms.
Yeah.
And over a 2,000-mile race, it'll wear you down. I'm seeing a trend now where, like in the last few years, everybody rode Polaris skis on their ski-doos. And
Yeah.
the downside to that is they break the tips off. You get to rattling over the icy terrain, and it snaps this tip off. And I tell you how tough those guys are. They'll take that ski and turn it around. So it broke the tip off, and it's down to flat ski. They'll turn it around and use the lip in the rear as their tip and go 90 miles an hour down the river. So
Yeah.
until they can find a ski. But I'm seeing a trend away from that to something that's more durable.
Yeah. The new Pilot X skis are pretty awesome.
Yep.
Like they I don't know that there's ever a reason to get rid of them. Unless you have a real diehard preference or you're sponsored by CNA. I don't know that you could change it. There's a lot of conversation going on about 137 versus 129. Gooley says he thinks the 129 corner's easier. And I agree with Corey. I don't really notice a difference between the two, to be honest. He doesn't either. He wanted the 137 for the extra link spot. I think that's a disadvantage because then you put a bag back there and you leave unzipped and you lose all your contents. So
hey, Gary, I've done that just so make you feel
everybody's
stop and have a sandwich or something out of the back and leave it unzipped, and go back and you find everything except the heavy stuff.
Yeah, I've picked up stuff from people before and set them on trees or the side of the trail, and I know. And it's, knock on wood, this is my first year, and I had it twice happen so far. But yeah, So anyway, and Bart Bow rode my 850 Renegade on the weekend, and he said that he noticed a big difference. But again, I didn't, But my suspension is different than his too, so it's a lot.
I think that
that's part of it. I mean, if you had a snowmobile that was set up exactly the same at 129, and then you did that same setup and had the same feel and driver on a 137, I think you'd be hard pressed to notice a difference. Maybe if it was really stutter bumps or something, like short ones where that track's going to bridge over a little bit better, but it's only 4 inches, right?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Iron Dog, the first few days, a couple reasons. Like when we tested for Arctic Cat, and they had that, it was around when they were developing what we called F2, so that would have been around 2000, and that was a narrow sled with a stamped frame, so there was really no round or square tube anywhere. They were just stamped out of aluminum.
Yeah.
And Kirk Hibbert and Russ Ebert and the guys that really smart guys that developed that were trying to get it narrow, and they because that extra inch and a half was a lot of weight. So drive axles and jack shafts and chain, all the componentry, and plus I raced those the very first time. I think Kirk and Hibbert raced Iron Dog, and we raced conventional ZR chassis, and then we raced the next year that new F2, what we called F2 chassis, early production stuff, and super agile and fun to ride. But the thing about Iron Dogs, you'll find shit that you would not find. The factory used to say we'd find stuff in 2,000 miles that the factory wouldn't find in 100,000 miles of field test. So, and it's just the way it is. You don't, like you would never know things like the cooler's bridged in the rear. So super cold temperature, super sugary snow, and they just bridged. So it melted away from and made an ice bridge, and burnt motors up because they got hot at 50 below. So, yeah, so kind of interesting. And, what we learned over the years is it's really nice to take the new cool shit, but not until we put, 10,000 miles on it under our own bodies. So we make sure it's durable.
Yeah. Do you see that manufacturers test up in Alaska for that reason, or did they not?
Yeah, I mean, all the factories tested here for years. Not so much BRP. Arctic did a lot. Polaris did a lot. Back. I mean, that's how far I go back. I mean, they used to have a race, an ice oval they called Brant's Lodge, and that usually happened in October or November, and it was always cold. It was the first place that built ice, and there was everything from Scorpion to Ski Rule. I mean, this is early 70s stuff, and they'd all come up, and so it was really cool. I mean, the history you think about, in the 60s, there was over 100 manufacturers of snowmobiles, and now we're down to just a few.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I know. It's like Sears. Every hardware company had one. Yeah. Like Johnson, Evinrude, you name it. I think Singer had one too. Like, Harley. Like, it's a crazy time that everybody is getting into it. And now it's 4, or 5 if you count Taiga. What do you think about the electric movement?
I don't have any real opinion about it. Electric bicycles are cool. We do that a little bit, and power assist. Yeah. And and little scooters and stuff, golf carts, that kind of stuff. But as far as snowmobiles, and I mean, I see some of the guys making a pretty big splash with motocross bikes too. And
that Zero, there was a Zero on the trail or on the track. It's on my channel, and it's crazy how quiet it is and the torque on it. It's pretty impressive. But I don't know. You got to hand it to Taiga. They're putting charging stations along the trails in Quebec, and they're going to have, I think it's a 200-kilometer loop that you can do, and charging stations around it. So I think once they get out, they'll
be able to go. Is that a subsidized thing then? Probably.
Yeah, but you mean government subsidized?
Yep.
Yeah, possibly. Possibly. I'm not sure. I don't know whether, I know the vehicle subsidies have dropped, but maybe if they can start proving these things are worth their weight, that they will get some subsidies put in, because I know 2-strokes are, often frowned upon. I know the outboard industry's getting away from them. So who knows, maybe it's something that there'll be a push to get rid of 2-strokes in the snowmobile world, but I don't know. I'd have to see it to believe it, but I think it's a neat thing. I think we got room for it, and it'll drive other people to innovate too, right?
Sure.
But
so you asked me a question a while back, and I need to back up a little bit. We used to race in Whitehorse, BC, kind of your westernmost province, and we did a lake race there, 500 miles, and it was a team race, and I couldn't find anybody to race with, so I raced it by myself, and on ice, and it was a long day. I mean, it was about 8 hours of racing, kind of nonstop, and but I always marveled at how well a job that, I think they had a more or less a competition between the provinces about who could draw the most people to Canada for an event, and they did a great job. So I always admired that.
Absolutely. So let's have a look at this picture. This is Jacob Harney, and he's one of the Michigan yeah, he says, hey, Gary, Allie's 21st birthday was on Saturday, so instead of getting her hooked on alcohol, I figured I'd just get her hooked on power sports. I got her a very clean 2003 Polaris XC600 SP, and she's loving it. Gonna have to get some ballistic beer now to help us warm up after our rides. Hope the snow is flying up by you, and ride safe. Yeah, pretty good shape too. There it is behind me there.
Yeah, that's a cherry there.
I'm talking about the sled. Don't be talking about Jacob's girlfriend like that.
I was
right?
talking about the sled there. Come on.
There it is under the hood.
Yeah, pretty clean.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
nice.
those were really popular iron dog event, sleds back in the day.
Oh, seriously, the XC was right.
Yeah, XC.
Nice, 600, perfect size. Yeah, she'll love that, man. I think that's a great starter sled, right? And then the other outlaws, they said they had the last week they had the snowmobiles on the lake, and then this weekend they took the side by sides out there.
That popular in your area, Gary, too? Side by sides?
Not so much my area. These guys, the outlaws, do it right. I mean, they treat it kind of like snowmobiling all year round. Each of them have them. Like there's 5 outlaws, and you can see they each have a side by side. So they take their better halves out or their buddies out, and they do all kinds of trips all the time. And I think, I ATV is big around here, but our trails are pretty tight, so it's hard to, especially this
hard to get
racer
it to go side by side in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you go up north, and I think that attitude's changing. We're up near Collingwood, and there's actually an ATV club that was grooming trails specifically for ATVs and side by sides, and there were some rigs like the one behind me here going through it. So yeah, it's I think it's kind of cool. I'd love to try it. Like I think it would have the same feel of the whole culture of snowmobiling. I mean, ATVing you're by yourself, like you even riding with friends, right? It's still not the same. Where I think the side by side's got the, you've got a little bit more substantial to it, and they ride so nice too, right? Like they really got it. So
pretty popular here. Like I've got a 2021 Polaris General XP4. It's an XP4, so it's a 4-seater, full cab, heater, lights, and in the wintertime, when we're low on snow, that's what we use instead of snowmobiles. When things get, whatever it might be, but absolutely, you get 4 people. You can sit in there, have a music on and the heat on, your tennis shoes, and it's a pretty good gig. So it's really popular here.
Yeah, well, and it might grow too if the snow conditions are kind of iffy. I mean, the last couple of years we've been spoiled. We've had good snow conditions, but I think now the manufacturers are cranking these out. Everyone's got a really good product, and it just is getting better and better. I mean, Honda came out with a Talon a couple of years ago. That's a pretty neat rig. So yeah, but Shag Boy says too, Michigan Outlaws, that's super cool with the side by sides. They do it right, man. I'm hooked when I watch their videos. It just makes me want to do it, right? Yeah. So yeah, so. And then this is Jason. He said he sent in some old sled restoration and riding pics. So there's an old Rev for you. Yeah, the original Rev, the yellow windshield, even those Power Mad handguards that they put on them. I got a couple. There's a SRX, I think, sitting back in there.
Whoa, that's a brave man there. Well, I just saw that old Elan there. That was my very first BRP.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was your very first sled there?
Yep. It was a 71, and I think that's the year they came out. I think they weighed about 250 pounds, a little single cylinder Rotax in them, and I completely destroyed that thing. It just I don't know what year. I think that's a little, I don't know what year might be.
That's got to be 70s, like maybe 72, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't remember mine having those those vents there like that. So it must have been a different year than
you might have been older.
Yeah, we yeah, I mean, snowmobiling here has been, I think our family had the very first one in 67 or something like that. So we've been around in our family a long time, and I mean, it's a great sport. I'm really glad to see all the interest. now, and with the whole COVID thing, it just looks like the industry as a whole is completely healed up. You know, I mean, you can't hardly buy one. You know, if you wanted one, you got to plan way ahead to buy any recreational vehicle. They're just sold out. So that's good. The industry takes it on the chin a lot. You know, all it takes is a couple bad snow years, and they figured out how to do that. They snow check stuff, and they don't build too much stock that isn't pre-sold. So they figured it out over the years. But you know, that's kind of what took Arctic Cat down in the 80s. You know, they just had a couple bad snow years, and that's all it took.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, the pricing though has gone ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
I had a buddy that he bought a sled last night, but he's been on the hunt. He bought property up north, and he's been on the hunt for a sled, and he's been bugging me. Like, and I've been just kind of steering him in the right way. You know, it had to be Skidoo, and it had to be an E-Tech, and I told him a 600 E-Tech, and he showed me a 2010 600 E-Tech, and then he showed me a 2014 800 Renegade in the XS chassis, and I went, there's not even a choice there, man. You got to go with the Renegade. You know what I mean? Like, and whatever. Check out the sled behind here. That's that Rev. Look at it. It's one of the original XRSs with the Lexan hood.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that before my time with BRP? So I'll tell you a story. You know, I've been around racing a lot, snowcross racing in the Midwest. So when Blair Morgan and Carl Kuster and I can't think, Jamie Ansu and all those guys were all Arctic Cat guys, and they all raced, and they all Blair was never here, but a bunch of those other guys had been at my house here and stayed. And when we were testing, I think in Gaylord, Michigan, with had a national there, and then we rented the track. We being Arctic Cat rented the track so we could, and a couple other factory guys there, and that was when the Rev first came out. And they're going like, "You got to ride this thing," and I was scared to death to ride it because of my alliance with Arctic Cat. So, but it was pretty amazing to see the transformation with Blair and Carl and Reimer, and I mean that whole group that were dyed in the wool Arctic guys. It went over to BRP, and they developed a great product, and over the next, to when the Gen 4 chassis came out, leaps and bounds.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. They just kept getting better and better every platform they come out. So. And that's the thing. A lot of people think, well, the XS and the XP don't look too much different. Why is the XS better? And it's like, it's miles better. It's the stuff you can't see. Yeah. So it's I thought that Shag Boys' friend Gary had a 2007 XRS just like that, and he said it was badass. It's a great sled. Yeah. I love the hood. I love the Lexan hood. They're be nice to own one of those. But anyway, the price in these things is probably like $3,000-$4,000 higher than what they were when I bought my 2009 2 years ago. And it's like, yeah, it just makes me want to think I should sell my old sled.
Well, then you'd have to buy something new, and it would cost just as much, right?
That's the problem, right? That's the problem. So
the market's just up. Yep.
Yeah, but I think, and everybody yells at me when I say it, but I think we do need a bad snow year to kind of put the pricing back, get the pricing back into perspective, because it's just insane right now.
Yeah, we're selling more product than they can make, and the waiting lines and stuff. So it'll zero back out here after a few years, I guess. And like I said, if all it would take is a bad snow year, and
yeah. So we'll see. Yep. But yeah, this is from Jamie, and he says, "Gary, I know I'm late. Sorry, didn't matter today because I was late. While you guys were waiting for the show to start, that 5 minutes, I was actually putting these pictures together. So that's how crazy it was today. Worst case, it'll be part of next week's show. No, we got in this week. He says, here are some pictures of us riding on the weekend in Old Forge. He ran into the Yeti. and at the gas pumps at Water Safari. The other picture is me and my fiance looking over the view at Elsie's Lookout, and the pic is the trail side. She rides a 2016 ZR 5000 LXR, and I jumped ship from Cat to Do this year with that nice XRS. I love that color scheme. So Expedition Yeti, that Yeti back there, that's a cancer fundraiser. We actually helped them at Christmas time. We raised over $5,000 for cancer, and we gave half of it to Expedition Yeti, and we gave half of it to the Kelly Shire's Breast Cancer Foundation. So it was kind of, yeah, thank you. No, it was a lot of fun. We did an auction, which was a riot. I can't wait to do it again next year. And the story with this is Robert O'Donnell in the suit there, and his son had cancer, and basically after he went into they had cancer treatments and stuff, he took it pretty bad, and then he was on the mend, and they're at the kitchen table, and they had done some successful fundraisers, and the son, I think he was 9 years old at the time, said, "Dad, I bet you if you dressed up like a Yeti, people give you $1 to take a picture with you." And that's what you do. You throw the guy $1. Okay. I mean, some people throw more than $1 at him, but I mean, I think he's raised, and he's got a sponsor that actually matches dollar for dollar. So that 2,800 I gave him Canadian, which was about, 3,200 US or whatever it is. He would have got 3,200 US from his sponsor. So big, I think he's up over $10,000 now. So he was ecstatic. So, so great idea. Great fundraiser. The kid's so cute, tugs at your heartstrings, and they are snowmobilers true and true. I mean, he goes out everywhere, and I mean, he posts on Facebook, and people go out and try and find him to get their picture taken.
Find the Yeti.
Yeah, find the Yeti. What a great philosophy. There's his fiance looking over. She's got some leaves there in front of her. See right there, and she's going, "He loves me. He loves me not. He loves me. He loves me not."
You got a few more leaves to go.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Jamie will have to let us know next week what it ended up settling on.
Yeah,
that's right. Maybe she walked home from there. I don't know. So this is Shag Boys. We talked about him there in the chat, and he says, "Great job with the show. I try to tune in when I can. Keep up the great work. I sent you 3 photos." He says, Old Forge on January 22nd. Gary, Zook, and Dennis. That's that picture right there. And he says, photo 2 is Old Forge, the whole crew with the sleds. Oh, that's it there.
Oh, I see.
And then the next photo is his son Parker jumping a road yesterday. It was about 6 feet in the air and about a 40-foot jump. The kid's a daredevil and gives me anxiety, but he loves him. Look at that. I love it.
Well, I've been there. When my kids started doing that stuff and they started doing the backcountry jump, and I went with them up to what they call Turnagain here. And, I've been around snowmobiles my whole life and rode mountains and thought I was pretty well versed. And holy cow, man, they're jumping these. They'll build a ramp for days and days, and they'll jump that and go off the edge of a mountain at a drastic, steep angle. And it was like, holy cow. I mean, so yeah, I know what he feels like to get anxiety from your kids. Yeah.
But then you let the kid buy a vet.
Whoops.
Yeah. So no, I haven't seen many videos on that, but he bought a 74, I think it was, which is pretty cool. Yeah. They're a vet family.
Fiberglass body. Yeah.
Yeah. Wrap your ass in fiberglass, they say, right?
Yep.
And that's Zook, the guy with the smoke. We had a thing last year that if he quit smoking from, I think it was about now to the end of the show in March, that 509 was going to give him goggles, and we had people stepping up, but he didn't last a couple of days. I think he had lit the cigarette by the end of the show. We're not sure, but his
heart wasn't in it. Don't sound like.
No. This is a thing when you watch Shag Boys or Pasty Boys videos. They both have YouTube channels, and it's a drinking game when he lights up a smoke. And if you start watching stuff at 5 a.m., you'll be drunk by 5:10. So funny guy, good crew there for sure.
Fantastic.
I'd love to ride with those guys someday. Doesn't look like with COVID restrictions that we're getting across the border anytime soon. So maybe I can sneak in the back of one of those Freedom Convoy trucks and get down there and see you guys.
There you go. There you go.
So, yeah. Tad Hershey said it's been a slow start to the season, but he's rolling now. Yeah, he had 11 guys at cabin in Greenhaven, Michigan for the Martin Luther King week. The Lake Effect machine was on, and we ended up riding about 750 miles. That's great. In this picture, 8 of us were playing off a trail near Grand Marais, Michigan. There's a song about Grand Marais. 11 guys, a big group. So most days we split off into smaller groups, then met back at the cabin for dinner and ping pong. It was great fun. By the way, he loves his LED lights that I sent him for his 19 Renegade XRS. They're awesome bulbs. And they are awesome bulbs. So there you go.
I just bought LEDs for my 2 new experts that I have here for my wife and I, and what a night and day difference. So,
oh, it is truly.
It's a company in Ontario, I think, as it makes them. Is that? Do you know the name?
Moto Jungle, by chance? Did you get them from me?
I could have.
I think you probably
know
did.
Each other and didn't know it.
Yeah, you probably did. If it's Ontario, that's me.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'll try to dig back through my emails.
Motojungle.ca is the place. Yeah, and that's them there in the second sled from the left. But they're awesome. They're
I mean, night and day.
FKN bright LED. Hashtag.
Yeah.
But
well, that is one thing is a bit disappointing. When you buy a sled that caliber and you can't hardly unload it from the trailer.
Yeah, it's true.
It's got a bit. So it is what it is. Sometimes that's might be out of their price range or something. I guess I don't know.
Yeah. I think Dominator says we need a snowmobile sessions ride in Michigan. We have Shag Boys, Michigan Outlaws, Swanky Cat, and Dominator. Of course, let's do it. That'd be awesome. Get Mark Bow down there too, and Corey. We'll all come down next year. Yeah, respect the Freedom Convoy, guys. Yeah, for sure. Like that would be fun. But yeah, it's like I found with my 800 when I started riding it with stock halogens. That's when I started looking into LEDs and learning about them. It was dangerous because you could outride a halogen bulb, no problem on an 800 like that. So it's like to not put them in the 850s is pretty crazy. But I've forgotten more than I've learned about about LED technology, and I've settled with 2 brands that I represent, and they're engineered proper. They're engineered very similarly, and the B2 Stingers are a simple, clean bulb. There's no rectifier box to come unplugged. There's the LEDs are engineered beams, so it's nice and bright. You can't go wrong. So anyway, motojungle.ca. But anyway, this is from Garrett, and he says, "Great job with the show." Oh, that's the last guy's comment. I don't think Garrett gave me any wording on this, but that's a VR 850 right there. It looks good. And then here's another picture he sent in as well, which is pretty cool. So you had mentioned you haven't seen much from gauges, like, or played around with the gauges. The new BRP gauge is pretty spectacular. 7.8 inch panoramic, and then they have the 7-inch 7S display on the Polaris, which is pretty awesome for running maps on. I mean, that would be a game changer in something like the Iron Dog.
Yeah. So most of us, you to settle in with the GPS, you're comfortable with it, and we rode, used the Montanas and the 276s for a long time. And when GPS technology came around, completely changed the complexity of the race, because it doesn't matter what visibility is like, you can still find your way.
Yeah.
When we started doing this, you had to see, and now all you got to see is the magenta line. So, that you're following. So it changed the race. Yeah, made it way safer. Guys get out on the coast, they get lost, disoriented. Next thing you know, they're driving out past the ice, on the ocean and they're drowning, you know. So
Wow.
I mean, never happened. Guys got wet, but nobody died. And, you know, which was a tribute to the kind of the race and the safety factors that come into it. So.
Yeah, yeah. The I know with Cane's Quest, I mean, I liken this a lot. Like that's kind of what we learned about first, and they say at the end of it, you can only go like you're so exhausted and mentally drained that 20 miles an hour is pushing it. You know, and the lead guy is the lead guy because he can see the guy behind is so drained, all he sees is a shape in front of him. He doesn't really know what he's following, you know. So is that kind of like the way the way the Iron Dog is? Is it that brutal that
you know, they try to throw the layovers in there so you don't have guys out there all, you know, kind of sleepy drunk, you know, and but I've done 24 hours nonstop, you know, over horrendous terrain. and they're right. You know, you get to the, you know, it's snowing, big snowflakes this big, and you know, they're hitting your helmet and it's sliding down, and pretty soon your boots are full of water.
God.
You haven't eaten in 20 hours, and you haven't drank anything hardly in that same amount of time, and you're just, you know, I virtually fell asleep in the race on my sled driving down the river. So,
and do you fall off it at that time, or do you just wake up?
I just dozed off and woke right back up, and I said, "This is crazy." But we were within about 30 miles of the finish line, and then you know, when you get off the river and you get in the trail system there, and it's like, man, you can start feeling it. And then, I mean, you know, once you as a racer, once you feel that, you know, the adrenaline of a win, pretty hard to beat. You know, I think it's just super addicting. You know, kind of the adrenaline junkies that a lot of us are that are probably on this show.
Yeah.
So it's very cool to, you know, and it drives you kind of, you know, when there's nothing left in the tank. So yeah, I've been all over the place on that. So yeah, that's a great point, Gary.
Yeah, that's cool. No, and that's one thing that really stuck out to me. It was an interview that I was watching from Cane's Quest with two other riders. Now, going back, did you ever race with your son?
I did. Yeah, got to race with him 1 year, and then he started kind of racing on his own with a fellow Canadian from Western Canada there, and
that you competed with those two that last year.
Yeah, we were
right.
Yeah,
that's right. So, and you didn't win that year. You got second.
So we, yeah, I think that's right. So last year, I, you know, one of the things, as you know, as the race progressed and I aged, you know, there was a point where, you know, it wasn't making sense. So I just changed my philosophy, and we're going to ride, you know, we're not going to ride 80%. We're going to ride 90 or 95%. And, you know, bit me, you know, we had crossed Gullivan Bay, and it had a high tide and some wind. So it pushed about 3 feet of water in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can go around, but it's really slow. So there's just a skim of ice on there occasionally. And there's, you know, probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 snowmobiles that are, you know, got wet, and they're, you know, this much of the windshield sticking out, and we're water skipping for about 7 miles.
Wow.
and, you know, finding a little patch of ice to give your belt a break. Because, I mean, what happens when you're skipping like that, you don't realize is that your track's locked up. There's positive displacement on water where there isn't on snow. You know, snow, you're constantly slipping, and on water, you know, even with a 1-inch track like we raced, maybe 1.25 inches, it would be your belt to get hot, you know, without the proper cooling. And anyway, got across, made it across that, and we were so happy to get to land, and went down and G'd out in some bumps and kind of pitched me up and fell off, and I I hit my, basically stayed on the sled, and the sled landed on its side, and it kind of dragged me along through the tundra, and there was no snow there, just hard tundra. And I said, man, that kind of hurt. We were about,
That's every weekend for me. I think you've been watching my channel.
yeah, yeah. And come to find out, what I did is I ruptured my spleen on my left side, and that'll kill you. Your spleen will bleed into the sac, and if that doesn't contain it, it'll burst. Anyway, long story. So we get up, and we get going up to the next checkpoint, which is White Mountain, and it's about 90 miles from the halfway point. And I hit the brakes a couple times, and then when I was pulling up the check stop, I realized that I'd sheared off my brake reservoir and I had no brakes. So I rode the next to the halfway point in Nome, no brakes. And I mean, this is kind of coast terrain, I would say. No trees, not much depth perception, a lot of wind, which makes a lot of snow drifts that are on the coast of Alaska. It's like driving on concrete. So,
oh my God.
Anyway, so get to the halfway point. We're still in pretty good shape. Coming back, flat light, hit an ice chunk out on the, and so I had never crashed. 32 years of doing this, I'd never really crashed. And that's when I was telling you that your eyesight starts going, and your low light visibility or vision gets challenging. So, and I hit that, and I don't remember anything after that. So the short story is that I got to the finish line, had 3 broken ribs under my shoulder, and a collapsed lung, and a ruptured spleen. So I finished over 1,000 miles like that. So anyway, that was my last race, and it was insane. About a week after the race was over, I actually my spleen started weeping again, and had emergency surgery, had my spleen removed. So and a lot of tough guys in the race. And I mean, I've had a lot of great partners, and you'll see as you scroll through these pictures, kind of some of the tough guys I've raced with over the years.
No, you like physically fitness. Are you like when you were racing, were you working out a lot? Were you or were you just like, some of these guys look skinny?
Yeah, in the early years, didn't do anything. I just jumped on the sled and go. That's just I mean, we'd train when we could, but you didn't need to in your 20s and 30s, and you start pushing 40s and 50s, and then it takes a shitload, of work. And I always say, like, the best, my philosophy was I just need to get on a sled as much as I can, because one of the things that you need to train is your eyes on how far to look ahead. So riding at speed kind of does that, and then you get comfortable and you know how far you can see. And like I mentioned, you were talking about lights earlier. We use like a rigid light or something like that. And now, barring snow or ice fog or whatever, you can see us better in the night by far than you can in the day, and way better depth perception. So we actually preferred it at points in our career. We'd actually prefer to ride at night. If it was cloudy, we'd take a layover and burn through the day and ride at night.
Yeah. Right on. Now look at what are we looking at here? These are XS. So was this before the Iron Dog was launched?
Yeah,
like
this
an Iron
is
Dog model.
Actually, my wife sent these in there, and that's probably not even my team. That looks like maybe Tyson and Tyler.
What is she doing? She's jumping ship.
Nah, she just had a collage of them there.
No, that's cool.
I sprung this on her pretty late, so. Yeah, that is in the halfway point in Nome. So that's the Nome garage is what that is.
So this is where you could work on the sleds.
Yep. You see all the sleds in there. And eventually that entire shop would be jammed with snowmobiles. And then when you want to work, you got to move everybody's stuff to the side. So you clock in and you do your work and until it's done. And when you're done, they'll clock you back off and it gets added to your travel time.
Oh, so it could be, you could take, it's not like you have to leave in the morning, so everything's got to be done. You could, if someone's using I take it there's welders and tools like that there.
Yep.
Is it something where if you have to wait and, you get out the gate later, you just don't lose your time? It's because it's
Well,
chipped, right?
You all have to be done by the time your calculated departure time is. So
Oh, I got you.
if you were the first guy there and it's a 36-hour layover, which I think is what they've been doing in Nome, then you better have your shit done before that 36 hours up. Otherwise, you'll be doing it on the clock and you'll be losing time. So
now you can't fly parts. You can't have people drop parts off to you or call Amazon for something. Can you now? Or
yeah, you can. You can get parts at the official layovers, and I pardon me, I may not know the exact rules how they are now, but for a while, any of the check stops you could get a part at, and it became very advantageous to ride the kind of snowmobile that everybody rides in the bush because you could get a part off of them. But to be truthful with you, all the years that I, my 7 wins, most of those wins came with very little problems. So you went the entire race and hardly did anything. Back we had the Arctic Cat chassis figured out pretty good, and we won 3 years in a row with Mark Carr, and damn near won a 4th in a row. and barely did changed the part, barely did that. And then we had 1 year where we changed pistons 3 times and still got second. So you just never give up. You do what you can. You cut your losses, and and especially in the early years, anything could happen towards the end of the race. So this is another shot of that here, Gary. So this is how it gets. There'll be it'd be completely jam-packed with sleds and Nome. That's me sitting on somebody else's sled.
Looks like you're pulling on the coil wire and yanking it.
I think I've ripped the throttle cable off or something. I don't know.
Right.
It's a pretty good atmosphere, kind of cool. Everybody kind of lets their guard down just a bit and enjoys. And I've helped. I've put my gloves on and go help another brand if they got a lot to do. We'll help. We won't help our top competitors, but if there's somebody back in the field needs a hand, we'll help them. That's just kind of the way it is. So it's a pretty cool camaraderie in the race. And I had battles with certain people in my entire career, and it was just extra incentive to ride a little harder.
Yeah, true, right?
Yep.
That's pretty cool. There must be lots of stories and tips and stuff going on there that when you're at a break like that, right?
Yeah, everybody's getting together and say, hey, did you hit that pressure ridge out of Topcock? Talks about that. And guys in the back will start seeing parts on the side of the trail, and they say, oh shit, I better slow down because there's something here that everybody's hitting, right?
Yeah, right. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep.
And are these the trophies?
Yeah, that's my son to my left, and looking my left, Looker's left, and Ryan Simon's the little guy. We call him Little Bugger. And that was 2017, and I didn't ride that year. Like I say, I think I was done in 15, but pretty proud moment.
I bet, right? That's amazing. Keep the family, keep it in the family. The tradition lives on.
Yeah, we have 8 wins in our family now.
That's cool. And now, has COVID stopped the race, or is it still going on?
Yeah, it's been going on. They had some challenges last year. There's a pretty high indigenous population there in a lot of this communities that we go to, Western Alaska and along the Yukon River. and they have kind of probably weak immune systems, and 100 years ago, some of those communities got completely wiped out by the Spanish flu. So, they're a little extra cautious about that in those villages.
Yeah, I can imagine, right? And what's healthcare like up there? I imagine it's pretty fragile as it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those communities are subsidized by because there's limited resources in those communities. So that's probably about 14, I'm guessing. 13 or 14. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That was with my other partner was Aaron Bartell, that he's about 30 years younger than I am.
Wow. Now, how do you when you're looking for partners, do they come out of the woodwork, or do you hear about these guys? Like, how do you
I don't know,
recruit
man. Partner, those are kind of that's a very hard thing, Gary. Because you're trying to match your skill set to, you could be the fastest guy in the world, and if you have a weak link, if it's your partner's riding ability or his wrenching ability or whatever it might be, you're not a good team. You have to have a well-rounded team, somebody that likes to lead, somebody that's okay following, because they got to ride snow dust for 2,500 miles. So, and that's a challenge, as like you get on the Yukon River, you leave, where you're staying, and it's 42 below. You get on the river, it's 52 below, and this is Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
And when you drive through that, your sled makes this steam from the exhaust, and it just doesn't dissipate. So you're actually riding through a tube of snow dust and exhaust, and it's impossible to see in that. So you have to get long distances between you and your partner, and then you have far enough where, and this is, I would say, more of a challenge, extreme cold with nighttime, where your light's shining on that ice fog in front of you. So the picking a partner is hard. It's hard because you're married to him for 3 months, basically, between training, building 4 sleds. So you build 2 practice sleds. You'll put as many miles on there as you can to get your body in shape, and you try to test out any componentry that you are trying to, anything new, or any, if there's a change in the sled. So we build 2 brand new sleds and beat the hell out of them for 5,000 miles. And then you build 2 brand new sleds and race with them.
Race them. Yeah. And hopefully they're as good as the ones that you built to practice with. Dominator says those are some nice bunny boots right there.
Yep. Yeah. So that bunny boots got so that is a preferred boot in the race, because you can get those wet and they're still warm. You just dump the water out, and they are a fantastic. They're not super comfortable. Your feet sweat in them. They're not, but I've never frostbitten my feet, and I've been in 60 below weather, 100 miles an hour, and
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the rationale between the open face helmet as opposed to a full face? See a lot of open face.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's old school. You get old guys like me, and that's what we're used to. I will tell you that you see that no fog that's on my face. So that's a no fog foam mask, and we had it figured out. One of the things about full face helmets is they'll make a lot of turbulence. The wind comes at them, and they'll make turbulence, and you'll frostbite your face in places that you would never dream. So we had it figured out with those. And, there was, I put that foam tape right here on both sides of my temples, put that mask on, never had a problem. Now, if you break a windshield, that's a different story.
Oh, yeah, right.
I mean, traveling on the river system or on the coast at, 80, 90 miles an hour, 30, 40, 50 below, you don't get many chances to do it right. You better know what you're doing, and you better have your, those spots covered up. Otherwise, you're going to have some big old welts on your face.
Now, is there a safe word or a panic button or a shoot to pull if you're riding along and you can't finish the race? How do you stop?
You get to the next checkpoint and tell them
You got to make it to that checkpoint, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Now were they using satellite radios back then when you rode, or what type of communication were you guys
Well, we
using?
used a variety of, and I always call them the Scott Davis rules. So what happens is you come up with this innovative idea, and then by next year they'll make a rule that says you can't use that. So and a lot of things we pioneered over the years just because I've been doing it so long. One of them was radios, and then we had airplanes flying with us, and we would communicate. We could communicate with airplanes. So
They could really scope out what's ahead of you in the daylight.
yeah,
right?
I mean, people think that's a huge advantage, but it's more or less about telling them, hey, we're having trouble. Can you meet us at the next checkpoint?
Yeah.
It's more of that kind of because you couldn't take anything out of the plane if it wasn't at a checkpoint. So it really didn't have, and a lot of guys, a lot of the top teams, we have an airplane. My brother did it for me forever. Flew the race we basically disassemble a sled and put it in his plane. And, he would try to stay ahead of us at those checkpoints. And if we needed something, have to figure it out, take a layover, and then, he'd try to get back to us and give us the part we needed. Yeah, just a really cool race. I've kind of been in a lot of conditions where you're out on the river changing pistons or something in a sled because you got bad gas, and earlier stuff. It's not that it doesn't happen occasionally now, but it's way less common now than it was back in the day.
Yeah. Wow. That's insane. Oh, we went too far forward there. There you go.
Yeah, that's another race. That's my son. He was probably might have been his first race on his own. And most of the new generation, Gary, they use the full faces. I don't think there's any. I mean, I would say there's probably more full faces in the race now because old dogs like me have retired.
The technology in the helmets have changed so much, though, too. Like the oxygen in the mission helmets, and they're practically heated inside. Like the oxygen is warm inside because it heats the visor garage up. So I don't know. As long as you had power to the helmet, then But I know with Kane's Quest, they said the less electronics you have to rely on, the better, right?
Yeah, that technology. We had a guy, I think, from maybe Ontario 20 years ago. He had the same kind of technology, kind of snorkel mask and a heated visor and stuff, and they just don't work in Iron Dog. You're just sweating too much.
Yeah.
At times, it's too hot. You can't breathe. And so, I mean, the motocross style helmet is probably the preferred helmet now with, and they figure out how to tape up, but they require more tape than that helmet you're looking at right there. I could ride to probably 20 below at speed without anything, just that mask and those goggles.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's the thing that floored me the most when I watched those intro videos that Kirk sent me, is that the duct tape on the face. I can't imagine stripping that off,
Yeah. I mean, I think we cycled past that, Gary, because it is really hard on your face and it hurts like hell when you're pulling it off. And there's no insulating value, very little. I mean, it'll deflect the wind and save your skin somewhat. But if you ever frostbite under that and then you have to pull that tape off, it pulls the skin with it.
Oh my God. Well, frostbite becomes like a bulge, right? Like
yeah,
you
it's a
can get like an orange on your face, right? Like, ugh, I can't imagine.
It's a blister is what it is. And, and it'll cut it or drain, or you'll scratch it and it'll drain on you. So yeah, this would have been 14 or something here. Looks like that's in my trailer.
So that's an XRS. So you had the suspension and everything in it with a 600 in it, that head.
Yep. Yeah, and so we were the first team to get across the finish line with the R motion suspension, because we kind of figured them out, and they just rode some. The guys were for my first few years on BRP product, which started in about 2012. There was a lot of guys that would go back to the SC5 suspension just because they knew them and they maybe been more durable. But we did really well with the R motion suspension, and it was way more travel, especially on the front arm. And you see that that fuel cell there. We had a fuel cell on both sides. We try to keep the weight low, and those are probably 2-gallon tanks on each side. So we would, and you'll see the gas cap there is got a safety wire on it, so you can't lose it. And then it's got also has a vent on the top. So the way we would plumb those tanks, they would actually, you'd block the vent in the main tank, and then you'd go to one tank with no vent, you go to the second tank with a draw line, and then put a vent in that. So how it would do, would draw a vacuum in the front tank, and then it would siphon those back tanks out. So it did it automatically, and it sucked a little fuel out of the main tank, but it really drew down the rear tanks first because the venting was through the back tank. So kind of an innovative thing, and there was no valves, nothing to forget, just an automatic system, and we pioneered that probably 30 years ago.
Well, that's nice. They're plumbed right in then. I was thinking that you had to actually unhook them and dump them in the fuel tank, which would have been a pain in the butt.
Yeah, there's no time for that. You got to have that stuff figured out. I mean, if you'll see that seat has we hollow the back of the seat out, and we'll put components in there. And we'll put you have to carry safety gear. So you have to have a 40 below sleeping bag, a tent, some food, and a way to melt snow, and some food. So, I mean, that's kind of I don't know, 10 pounds or something of survival gear you got to take. And then you have to have a certain amount of cold weather gear that's mandatory.
Wow. Yeah, you can't even imagine it, right? Sitting in the warmth of your house talking about this, and it's like, yeah. And now, do you wear flotation wear as well, or what's your theory on that?
Nope. We never, we crossed a lot of water, and there was some scary moments, like when the wind, so the ice freezes right up to the shore. Western Alaska, you get a certain high tide, and the wind, it'll take the ice with it and out to sea, and sometimes it just leaves a crack. Well, the snow might be 6 feet deep, or the ice is 6 feet deep, and there's a crack, and you drive into that in a snowstorm, you're done. The water's 6 feet down below you. You're done. You're going to drown. So, I mean, there's that. I mean, there's a lot of things along the race that'll kill you. Nobody's ever died. But a lot of people have been hurt, and that's why there's 2 people in a team, because it would be suicide out there with a single race, without a partner.
Well, and you need somebody to take pictures when you go over the cliff, right? and laugh at you when you get stuck.
Yes.
Now, is there wildlife, like a dangerous wildlife or anything like that you have to worry about?
One year I hit a caribou and a moose in 1 year, just bumped them. So
just a love tap, right?
Just a love tap, and just they're coming out of the side, and they come across you. So seeing sheep on the trail, caribou, a lot of moose, and then until you get across Alaska range, those moose will get on a trail because it's easy going. They don't have to deal with 6 or 8 feet of snow, and then they won't get off. So it's hard sometimes to get past them, and they get really ornery if you try to run them down the trail to get them to take a turn. And yeah, I mean, the dog mushers, the guys that do that, they have to carry weapons and because they'll kill the dogs. And I've plenty of situations where they, stomp the dogs to death.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
Well, I know in Kane's Quest, I talked about the polar bears, right? They look nice and cuddly, but you only get to pet them once.
Yeah. Then they chew your arm off. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, yep. So this is my first win, 1985 right here. So
That's cool. Look how young you are. Look at how young you are.
Holy shit.
It's Starsky and Hutch right there.
Yeah. Funny story though. So we didn't have two coats the same. So Gary was a little bigger than I was. So I gave him my coat and I'm wearing my wife's coat.
Oh, that's funny.
So yeah. 1985. So I'd raced prior to that, and I was across the finish line first in 1984, but my partner was fourth. So it's the last guy in your team. So I've lost by 1 second. I won by 3 seconds, lost by 3 seconds. And lost by 7 seconds. So it really, especially in the early years, it would come down to really tight races like that, kind of a drag race to the finish line.
Is it kind of like the Talladega Nights? I want to win this time. You always win.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you'd sell your soul for a win. If you work that hard, when it gets down to it, you dig pretty deep to figure out whatever it is you need to do to win the race.
Now, is your partner knows, like he's riding with you for you, right? Like when you take a riding partner and you're a champion like yourself, it's for you to win. Not, I mean, like he doesn't come on there thinking, you know what, at the end of this, I'm going to pass the guy and
no,
take
there's no value in that, Gary. So, I mean, like I said, you usually settle into who's comfortable leading and navigating, and who's comfortable, riding in the snow dust, because that's the challenge. And really, in my opinion, it's much harder to ride in the snow dust than it is to lead. And in my 30 plus years doing this, I almost always led. Not always, but I would say 99.99% of the time I led, just so I was comfortable doing that. And so my partners always had to deal with snow dust, and that's a challenge, and you got to figure it out.
Yeah, that's why you've gone through so many partners, is because they're riding into fuel and snow dust.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've had a few. Yeah. It's like marriages,
Yeah. Hey, you want to race? Yeah, that sounds like fun. I'm in. And then after the first year, it's like, damn him in the snow dust. Sitting back. Hey, I'm always at the back of the pack, and or I am a lot. It's you're riding in snow dust the whole time. Everyone's wondering why you're cold, and they're out front leading, and it's clear skies ahead, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Back in the early years, we had to worry about freezing carburetors and that kind of stuff. So we had to take some precautions for that. Riding in 2 feet of new fresh powder snow when it's 30 below, carburetors don't last very long. You got to figure that out. And that one year, I think I told you that I raced 24 hours nonstop, was that exact thing. It snowed, and there was fresh snow in some areas, and we had to take all of our layovers, and we had luckily taken an extra layover early on. So we basically burned through our layovers, and we had no choice but just go nonstop for 24 hours.
Yeah. Wow. That's saying Skidoo had on the later model Rev HOs, the carbureted versions. They had that little, there was a red knob on the fuel lines that you could actually tune for cold conditions.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it didn't enrichen or anything. It didn't touch the carb settings. It was in the fuel line settings, like a vent or something.
Well, Arctic Arctic had carburetors for a while that were not water cooled, but water warmed. So it ran coolant through them, and so
nice.
It would keep ice off there. So this picture, Mark Carr and I, so we were dominant in the 90s. So 97, 98, 99. We won 3 years in a row, and next year we were second. And then we split ways. Mark wanted to change brands to Ski-Doo. We were riding Arctic Cats at that time, and I was too loyal, and I didn't leave till years later. So
Yeah. Now, is there like, you don't have to disclose actual numbers, but is there money to be had in this, or is this more for bragging rights?
well, I can tell you, my first, I think my first race that I won, we might have won $6,000 between us, and probably spent 4 times that to get there. But I have won $50,000 for winning, and
Wow.
last year, I had a $35,000 sponsorship for the next year, and we didn't use it because neither one of us raced again. And if you have great sponsors and you win, and you can make money. I would say 90% of the people don't ever see a dime. They're fulfilling a dream. It's the longest, toughest snowmobile race in the world, and it's when you win that, you're the world's best cross country snowmobile racer. That's what you are. So
That's amazing.
Kind of the drive. Yep.
Yeah, that's wild. Now, is your son doing okay with it as far as making a living off it, or do you still have to have a career to back it up?
I think everybody's got a day job, and Corey's VP of operations in our company and part owner of the company, so it allows him time off in the winter to do this. He's had a little break, so he's a 7-time medalist in X Games, in different disciplines, and Iron Dog champion, and he's going down to race the whatever it is, the Grand 500, whatever, Winnipeg St. Paul type of version of snowmobile racing cross country in Minnesota, I think, in next week. So and he was also a monster athlete, so he had spiff coming from them. And but there's nobody that Tucker Hibbert and some of them guys, about the only guys that I ever know that just made a living off of that. And
Yeah,
it wasn't from winnings, it was from endorsements from Monster and other stuff that he did.
And that's kind of like any professional sport, right?
Yeah.
To a certain
we got
degree.
the top few percent that are making it. So that's my kids when that's probably 96, 97 or that. So my daughter, my son, it was a great time to have those kids involved. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Actually, I think Bruce Stewart's asking, electric start or pull start are they in the race?
Yeah, always pull start. Just don't want to give up the weight, Bruce. So you don't want to, and it's also something else to go wrong. So no, make the sled as light as possible and make it as durable as possible.
Yeah. Nice. So this is the tallest son here is the one that races now. That's cool.
Yep. Yeah. And
Nice.
so I'm not sure if I was able to send that picture, but I have another picture where they're both adults and both national champions at the same time in snowcross. So my daughter women's pro and Corey open pro. So
Nice.
yeah,
it's in the blood.
Racing family. So this is 1987, and so there's some of those lights I was telling you about earlier. So those are what we call them landing lights, because they're right kind of off the airplanes, and you can see what happens when you're riding in the tough snow. It just it's not enough heat in those, and that's the problem nowadays with LED lights. There's not enough heat to melt the ice off. So it's a new problem. We see ice fog is hard on them, but so that would have been kind of the cream of the crop, and that was an exciter, and those were biggest pile of shit made, in my opinion. So
you talk about track length.
Yeah. What was it, 118s or 121s or whatever?
Yeah, 118s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
But I mean,
did you extend the skids on these before you raced them, or what did you do?
we didn't in the early years. Later in the years, some of my years with Todd Palin, we'd extend this. Would put a bracket on or buy different, aftermarket Ice Age rail or something, and put on there to put a little longer track. And we pioneered that longer track length for a while, and it bridges the bumps better in our world, and it also, believe it or not, they get better fuel mileage. So um, there's a couple of things, and it gives you some more storage, like some of the guys mentioned earlier in your broadcast here. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I heard that the Phaser was the best power to ground machine ever produced. That's why they used them in grass drags. That engine, that chassis would put the power to the ground through the track better than any other sled at that time. Is that true?
I actually felt like we should have been racing Phasers. They had a 488 fan,
Yeah.
and they didn't use that 540 in those. I don't think which was a great motor, slower than heck, but durable. And we did have carburetor freezing problems on those in the extreme cold. And so I mean, like, one of the things that we did that you don't even think about, when I first started racing, we were still wearing, run of the mill, Dacron or Dacron snowsuits with Thinsulate in them, and they were junk. And we would get to a checkpoint, and from sweating all day long, they'd build ice in this part of the underneath here in your arm, and with no real means to dry out, no dryer or something, all it did was turn to water, and you left the next day with wet gear. So we started in 1985. My partner started reading books about mountaineering, and about how that's when Gore-Tex was first kind of pioneered, and polypropylene, was first, being discovered and used. And we pioneered that. We were the first people to ever race snowmobiles with that gear. And that gear that you're seeing right there was called Laytok, and it was some of the best gear. And it was like ski gear or something. I don't know what it was made for, but believe it or not, what we have underneath there, you can't see it, was onesie. It was a dive suit polypropylene, so it was made for diving underwater, cold weather.
And were you guys still cold? Like was this the best that you could come up with at the time, but it still wasn't warm enough?
Just depending on what the weather did. Like there, it's warm, you can see, because it was snowing, and we had come through, over the Alaska range there with, gigantic snowflakes. And Mark Torkelson, my partner there, has passed away since then. But we raced several years together, and he was probably the best field mechanic I ever knew. He just had an innovative mind, and in those years, that's what it took.
Yeah. Wow. Sounds like it, right?
Yeah.
A lot of handshaking, eh? You going, yep, deal. You're going to stay in the snow dust. Okay. You got it.
So this is the very,
for a case of beer at the end of for the case of beer.
This is in Nome on Front Street. My very first partner, and everybody say he looks like Barry Gibb. So
yeah, he does.
From the Bee Gees.
Bee Gees, yeah.
Yeah. So I think we won $6,200 that year, maybe. And he so I mean, you can see the boxy, windshields, and I don't know how we saw through all that with our sponsors pasted all over the front of the window.
Awesome.
And no auxiliary light and stuff. So, but we didn't know what we were getting into. This is the very first year, 1984, and you see the snow machine suits we have on, and those were junk.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
So you don't think about that, but that was a huge thing, to get something that would actually breathe and get rid of the moisture from your body, instead of just absorbing it in your gear.
Yeah, yeah. You must learn something every race and go, okay, next time we're going to do this. And next. So when was it you started winning? Like how many years did it take you to put a win under your belt?
It was the second year, and a pretty awesome story. So, we're cruising along there, and it's cold, really cold the first day. My partner had glasses, which would have been like we were standing there with those two Yamaha coats on, and he wore glasses and struggled like heck to see. And goggles were fogging and glasses were fogging. We didn't run goggles in those years. We just ran a shield, and it was anyway. He basically took his glasses off and rode blind for the first day. And
Wow.
day two, he goes like, well, it's obvious that I can't keep up at your pace, so we're going to have to slow down just a touch. And he was just pragmatic about it. And, I'm a 24-year-old kid or whatever, and um, um, so the second day we slowed down a bit and he recovered, and we ran across our competitors who ran out of oil. And like an idiot, I gave him oil. Kind of tipped the sled over and dumped a little oil out and wasted a bunch of time doing that. And then there was a halfway prize at, I don't know, maybe 50 miles in front of that. And we were just thinking they're going to be, well, they ended up passing us and
Oh
winning
no.
the halfway prize and never gave it up. So that started, my rivalry with John Fail. And it went the whole time till he quit racing. So anyway,
Jeez.
long
Wow.
and the short, then the best part of that story is we won the race. And we got to Unalakleet, and in those years, the sleds would build, they'd have heat and moisture, and they'd condensate. So like the SR5 motor, sometimes a little water would form on the trigger coil, and when you pull it, it shorted out. So no trigger coil, no spark. So we get there, and thank God they asked us to move our sleds, and we figured it out. And it was my sled happened. We pulled on it, it wouldn't go, it wouldn't start. So we knew during that layover, and my partner stayed up the whole layover and tore another sled apart and took the trigger coil off it. And I went and flew the trail with my brother. That's another Scott Davis rule. They don't allow you to fly the same day during the race. So because at that time I just needed a compass heading. We were out on the sea ice, and you don't want to screw that up. So you get out to sea, and you miss a village and you're out of gas. So anyway, that's long story is we on the clock, we fixed that. A trigger coil had to jack the motor up. So it basically unhook the motor from one side, tip it up, take the starter off, take the flywheel off, get in and do the trigger coil. So we just think we're, hours behind and we're never going to win. So we take off from there, and it is blowing. We're on the coast. It's 40 below, and we're just freezing our butts off. And first village we come to, the first house we saw, we just stopped and busted inside because we're just like freezing to death. So we eventually leave there. We were maybe 200 miles from Nome or 150 miles from Nome, and we're up on top, and we see these two lights down on the sea ice. Well, this was our competitor that I gave oil to that took the halfway prize. And anyway, we ended up beating them by 1 second. And
That's awesome. Karma's a bitch.
Yeah, karma's a bitch, man. Amen.
Yeah, that's awesome. This looks like your high school prom or something photo. You're at the wall holding the wall up while all the girls are out dancing.
Yep. That's exactly right. So 1986, another partner, another friend, we I think I was telling you, we rigged up 35 amp alternators to run off our top flywheel fan that ran the fan for the motor on the SR5, and eventually failed and burnt the motors up. So anyway, that was my thing about don't over prepare for one condition because you may not see it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And Kirk and Penny says, pretty impressive Scott Pioneer Gore-Tex into snowmobiling. That's awesome. Noble Shit says, I'm gathering we're talking to a living legend here, and we are. This is awesome. I'm spellbound on this one, man. Like the stuff that you're not telling us must be just incredible. You know?
Yeah, it'd take a long time to get caught up, and sometimes it doesn't. You don't remember those things till you get to talking.
Yeah, exactly. So this is back when it was still called the Gold Rush Classic.
Yep, you see the shirts there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's another one there. So
Yeah,
is that the next year?
Same year.
Oh, that's the same.
Just finish line. So yeah, we actually replaced two fans and a motor, and ended up in third place there. So you know, I mean, we were pretty innovative, putting a so that would be the top pulley. So the fan's driven off the flywheel, and a fan belt comes up, drives the fan. And so we extended that and put two pulleys up there, and then ran that belt up to that alternator, and it would actually slow the sled down when you activated that 35 amp alternator, so
because it's drawing and slowing down. Wow.
Especially when you first turn it on. But yeah, it was just one of those things, and you learn, and you're out there in shitty conditions, and you're competitive as heck, and it's a challenging race. It doesn't matter. I mean, it could be challenging with your partner. Somebody messes up, it's hard to keep you cool. And over the years, you just learn to take the challenge and try to do the best you can with it.
Do you get hangry when you're out there riding? Like,
yeah, 24 hours on a snowmobile do that to you if you don't eat or drink. So, yeah, I mean, we got better at it. Here we started pioneering, energy drinks and protein drinks and goo. What we used a lot, I would say, in the last 10 or 15 years was those little packets of goo. So it's calories, caffeine, and carbohydrates, and it's just a paste. So you could rip the top off and kind of roll it up and squirt the paste in your mouth even when it was cold. And I would say that was probably our biggest. And really, you're just talking about the first couple of days of the race. The rest of the time, it's not near as physically demanding. By the time you get to the river system, you've used you've traveled 500 miles, and you've used 1,500 miles worth of energy. Wow.
So the actual end is better than the beginning as far as it.
Yeah.
If they flip it around, you probably
unless of course they go round trip. So you're doing that twice, and then on the way back you're doing that after 100 snowmobiles have been over it and beat the shit out of it, and the mobiles are 4 feet deep. So
when do you find out what the route is? When the race starts, or do they give you a little bit of heads up?
It's the same every year. Yeah, same.
It is okay. Yeah.
They don't change it like Kane's Quest, or there's no options. You pretty much have to hit the checkpoints, and you could get off the trail if you want to, but there's no value of that.
No, it'd probably take you more time, right?
Oh, yep. Yeah, that's where it really varies. So Bill Long, this would be 93, my first year on Arctic Cat. And this is another funny story. So we built our sleds complete. Now, this is the year Kirk Hibbert built this sled. He was really the engineer behind this sled. And it was our first year of this chassis, and had gone from the EXT to this ZR chassis, which was won a lot of races on. And built the sleds. My partner takes them to Anchorage to get the seats made, and somebody steals the snowmobile on the trail right out of his driveway.
Oh no.
And this is like 7 days before the race. And our sponsor at that time, there was no snowmobiles left. And so it was his personal sled that we took, and we organized around the clock kind of pit crew to build that sled in I don't know how many short amount of time.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to be in Anchorage, ready for the race 3 days ahead. So you go through tech and all the nonsense. And anyway, we got it done. I mean, we're virtually still bolting the damn thing together on the start line. I mean, it's like we stop, we leave the starting line and we go about 100 miles and then goddamn shock's falling off because we forgot to tighten bolt, so that kind of stuff. Well, we end up winning. So pretty amazing.
That is awesome. Again, karma's a bitch, right?
Yeah. Yep. Amen.
Yeah. Bruce Stewart says, "My God, that's a story." These are the this is like the F chassis, right, or whatever they called it.
Yep. Yeah, this would be what we call F2.
Yeah, F2. Yeah. Nice.
So for a while there we could ride 700s, and those 700 in that chassis do 115 miles an hour. I mean, they were so fast. Like we'd take them out on the highway and run them. They were so fast they'd balloon the track out and lose traction. The driver would balloon the track out so big.
Oh, so it would be off the drivers.
Yeah, it just ballooned out past the drivers. Yeah, so I mean, and we were still allowed to race those, and it was a conscious effort to stay down below what the track would survive at. So probably should have won the race 5 more times on that sled, but those damn exhaust pipes would break randomly. And we finally figured out what it was. It was a real tight bend. Those motors are in there backwards, so the exhaust comes out the back instead of the front. So the exhaust and the carburetor is on the very, like towards you as the driver instead of exiting. So had a super tight bend with the exhaust. And it was something about traveling on the river long periods of time with wide open throttle, harmonics or something. I know I lost the race at least 3 times because it had cracked the pipe, then it melted the goddamn oil tank, and you couldn't put oil in, so we had mixed gas. And that's Todd Palin on the left there. His wife is ex-wife now is Sarah Palin.
Why? Yeah. I seen Kirk had commented that. That's crazy. Yeah.
Those sleds were fast and fun and narrow and easy to ride. And actually and I think I might have alluded to the fact those narrow tracks were highly efficient in the snow. Like if you're riding in 6 inches of snow, the narrower track was more efficient and more better gas mileage and better
I
speed.
could see that. What size lugs did you run? I know you had said 1.25 inches at one point.
Yeah, we vacillated back and forth. In the early years, it was whatever they came with. Which was whatever 3/4 of an inch or whatever the standard was, and we toyed a little bit with the single ply Cobra track, which was 1.25 inches. But I think the taller you make that, the less they cool. And harder it is on high facts. So we were in around 1 to 1.25 inches. I think probably towards the end we ran mostly 1.25 inches.
And no studs or anything. Like you didn't want any detriment.
Yeah, no. We run between 96 and 130.
So you actually did stud them. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, there's way too much glare ice in that race. You got to have that. And then pretty decent carbides. And Ron Patton with Stud Boys is just a faithful, perennial sponsor of ours, and just a great guy. And I know you have other brands that there's Woody's and there's brands made in
Fast traction products.
Right. Yeah, there you go. Sorry about that. I didn't mean
No, that's fine. Yeah.
But we pioneered that dually sport, not Woody's is called dually. He calls it deuce bar or something like that. And we have a big old piece of 3/4 by 3/4 because you end up hitting a lot of rocks and it knocked the carbide out of there. And so we ran the double carbide on there about I think we ran about 9 inches on there, and it made a difference. Made the ski more durable, bouncing off rocks on the South Fork of Kuskokwim and stuff. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah, we actually had Bergstrom Skegs on a few weeks ago, and they have single like carbides that you traditionally see are all little pieces of carbide on it.
Yeah, like
On
little
the
1-inch
rudder,
pieces.
and they fall out, right? Where he's got the
Oh.
good uglies that are one piece, right? So plus they've got the triple points, which is a totally another animal. To
Yeah, I
deal
mean,
with.
their technology and you know, you know, I've seen guys with CNA skis, you know, wear the skag off. And no, it's not. It's USI where you wear the skag off and their ski falls off. You
Yeah,
know? Yeah, because the
it's
skag holds the
connected.
ski on.
Yeah, that's right.
I've seen that in you know, certain terrible conditions will do that.
Wow.
This is probably the start. And this is Todd and I at heydays, I think, probably
Oh yeah.
kind of representing our brand there.
Yeah. That's cool. We've had a lot of Arctic Cat guys on this year. I know you're a do guy now, but yeah, there you go. What are you riding? What are you riding today? Like, what do you ride now for fun?
Or my backcountry preference is a 850 154 Expert. So
Sweet.
it's got the one-piece hood, short tunnel. I mean, I think it won't be long, and that whole Summit series won't have any long tunnels left on them. Such a huge difference when you ride that. About, you know, when you start to drag in the snow, and the mount, there's no snow flap, and the tunnel is
Yeah.
3 or 4 or 5 inches shorter than it normally would be for a sled that length. So, yeah, that's my preferred method. We have 3 or 4 of them in the family. My son rides a turbo, the same size, and then I have like I told you, I had a super wide with, I don't know what you call them in Canada, but there's a 24-inch track with the turbo 900, and that thing was, I mean, stupid fast for a 24 wide.
Wow. Well, that's the thing. And do you see much lynx up in your area?
You know, they're just starting to make an appearance up here, and
Yeah.
I haven't seen any in the race yet. I see a few of them out there. You know, I remember 25 years ago, we'd go to the Arctic guys would go to Sweden to race over there and get their butts kicked by the lynxes. So they actually bought one and brought it home to
That's awesome.
study it. Yeah.
Well, that's
I
the
mean,
thing. The mountain, the boondocker has that neat no snow flap. It's actually a little flap on the back of the rear axle. And I think that's a neat idea, right? Shorten the tunnel and put one of those on, and you're laughing.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, we did, you know, over the years with my years with Arctic Cat, you know, we did a lot of testing with cooling, and you know, other guys are doing that, and actually, the best place to put a cooler, the very bottom of the snow flap.
Really, yeah.
So, and they actually did that. They said, you know, hey, where's the best cooling at? You know, and so when you take the snow flap off and you get a short tunnel and you got a 3-inch track, so it's throwing all the snow behind you, challenging to make them cool.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I'm sure your trail conditions, you know, but we're running 3-inch tracks here, so it's really challenging. You know, if you run a 1.5 inch, 1.75, or whatever the preferred track is there, it's not as big a problem, but it is challenging.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, that was neat. Those are some great pictures that we had you send in there. That's pretty awesome. Hopefully it sounds like everybody enjoyed them and kind of clued in how tough this race actually is once you get talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the early years, I think, well, I mean, it's 2,400 miles now, so it's no cakewalk.
Oh, wow.
And you know, in the early years with navigation and some of those things and sleds, you know, running out there with a 1984 SR5 right out of the box, you know, it's and the speeds have just increased so drastically. And if you have any hardly problem at all now, last year was really cool. You know, I think last year is the first year there hasn't been a Davis in the race. So it was either me or my son. And so, you know, kind of watching it at a distance, and they had guys were leading for long periods of time, and they'd break, and the guys that actually won didn't know they'd won because they passed the team who was in the front. They'd pulled off the trail, so they couldn't see them. So really interesting race, and that 2,400 miles is, you know, because I've gotten home on the 2,000-mile race, and the sled never started again. You know, I mean, that's how close it was
Really?
to being dead. Yeah, you know, and that's what I was, you know, alluding to with the cooling issue. You know, we went from a 121 to a 128 track, and didn't extend the tunnel, and it didn't cool as well. And we were running into slightly overheat issues with plenty of snow, but overheating issues. And what we learned when we got in those conditions, of low snow or hard snow, we turn the clickers down on the springs and let the sled sit down a little bit further down, and it starts picking the snow up. So, you know, just the crazy little things you learn along the way, and you'd never dream that, you know, that thing, the reason that how a sled cools is it throws snow against the snow flap, and then it throws it back onto the cooler underneath. And without one of those things there, you're going to get hot. So,
Oh yeah, yeah. I know that with the original revs, people used to back over the flaps and chew them up, and then they just cut the bottom of the flap off, and then they would wonder what. No, they wonder why they'd overheat, because you're taking that one reflector out of the mix, right? So
yeah, we probably the most challenging thing for cooling is we rode, I don't know, maybe 70 miles on dirt.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, luckily it was warm, so there was water, so we would stop and lift the sled up and spin the track and cool the sled down, and then go to the next mud puddle we could find. And so everything from -50 to +50 we ran into. So,
Geez, that's insane.
yeah.
Insane. Now you're an old guy, but how can people find you if they want to keep up with the Davis family? Does your son have a Facebook?
He's got a lot of followers. Corey Davis, C Davis 160. Yeah, just do a search on Corey Davis. I'm not so hot with social media, so I like to follow a few things, but I think he's on Twitter as well. But yeah, and he'll be racing down south with Wes Selby there, I think, as a team member there. And there's
doing snowcross.
Actually, this is terrain, so cross
terrain.
country.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, 500-mile cross country, and I see they ran a 200-miler there last weekend and said the conditions are better than they've been in 20 years there. So got good snow cover, and they've struggled with that there. And, you know, that racing completely died just because it didn't snow there for 10 years.
Wow.
So
well, that's the thing. And if anybody's bored on YouTube, search up Scott Davis Iron Dog. Yeah. And there's a lot of videos out there and interviews and things like that. And it'll really take you behind the scenes and talking to other drivers and riders and showing Noble inside that garage, people tearing apart their sleds. And it was an eye opener for me. I mean, I've heard of Iron Dog. You've seen the sled, you know, you've seen Skidoo come out with it. You knew it was a race of some type. Yeah. You didn't know it was this kind of race. You know, you see that beautiful shiny sled in the showroom, and you don't realize it's an endurance. It won't look like that if you take it out.
Yeah, I mean, and I mentioned a little bit about the R motion, and you know, they had to increase, you know, tube diameter, and then they would heat and quench those components that would break all the time. There's a shitload of technology that goes behind that. The Iron Dog pioneers, you know, those kind of improvements on durability mostly. So that's
I think we lost power there or something, and we lost Scott, so he's gone. But Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the show. I found that really interesting. Yeah, it's too bad. I think he's gone for good. So you know what? I think it's getting late. We had a fun time tonight, and I think what I'll do is I'll just roll the credits now, and thank you guys for joining us and all the comments and questions throughout the night. But don't forget to subscribe to MUDBRATS, Snowbrats if you're watching for the first time. I know a few people had mentioned, and I really appreciate it. Hit that like button on the way out. Smash it like the throttle on an 850, and we'll see you next week. So thank you, Mark Bo, Uncle Buck. It was great seeing you guys again. Kirk and Penny, thanks a lot. And it's too bad we lost Scott there. So we'll get him back on. It'd be nice to see Scott and Kirk on together, and get those guys telling stories and how both races are different and parallel. So yeah, it's an interesting part of snowmobiling history, man. I'm glad that we had him on our show. But anyway, thanks for watching. And there's 2 more videos I think you'll like to watch after these credits if you're watching the replay. And we will see you next week.
Cancel your mail for a while. It's a journey for life, and I'm your ride. Hang on, we'll be long gone. A journey for life, I'm your ride. No, 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 no. It's a journey for